Blessings, beloveds. Anastasia, Cosmic Astrologer, with you again today. Alright, so for those that are interested in more relationship astrology, I've got something to share with you. So what I thought I'd briefly talk about today, because this is a very complex area, and it takes a very long time to study it and learn it, but hey, you've got to start somewhere. So I thought I would just share a couple of tips for you. And the main thing that I want to bring to your attention is, so I've talked about the power of composite charts, which let me just briefly summarize what that is. So when two people come together in a relationship, what you can do is you can actually take both people's charts and create a composite chart from the two people's individual birth charts. So what happens is the two individual birth charts become the one chart, which is called a composite chart. This composite chart becomes what's called a relationship chart, and it essentially shows the dynamics between the two people. That is, what are the dynamics in this relationship, and how will they be expressed through the relationship? Okay, because it is the two people coming together that create this chart. It becomes its own entity, as it were. Okay, so that's the composite chart. You do need accurate birth times, and I have voiced my passion about accurate birth times many a times, simply because when you don't have an accurate birth time, you won't get the timing of events right. In the case of a composite chart, if your time of births are incorrect, then what you will get as a result is you will get things such as planets in locations of the composite chart that perhaps would be in a totally different location if the times had changed. So to be in a different house. So if you had the wrong times and the composite sun showed up in the fourth, let's just say it was very close to the IC, right down the bottom of the chart. If the times were wrong, it could very well be that the composite sun goes back into the third house, which are entirely different meanings and expressions. And you'd much rather have the composite sun or moon in the fourth house as opposed to the third. Anyway, okay, so time of birth is crucial. Now, that aside, what you can do with the composite chart, quite apart from reading the composite chart, just to obviously get insight and understanding of the relationship and the two people coming together, that may be you and your partner, or if you're working with astrology, maybe you're looking at a friend's chart, or maybe you're looking at somebody else's chart and they're saying to you, I'm interested in connecting with this person, can you have a look at our composite chart? So there's many different reasons why and how you can actually look at a composite chart, whether it's for yourself or for other people. So I lost my train of thought. The energies have been really weird. Sorry to sidetrack. I will get back to where I was. But I just want to say that last night I didn't sleep very well at all. The energies were just really electrifying. The astral plane was incredibly intense, and there was lots of stuff moving and going on. I think some of you probably would relate to that. Today is the 30th of December, by the way, so I decided just to do a video, another video before the so-called New Year begins, because if you are an astrologer, or even if you're not, even if you just study this holy science and the nature of cycles, which is what we're talking about, you would know that the true New Year is actually on the 21st of March, not the 1st of January. Okay, all right, getting back to our composite relationship stuff. So, okay, so you have your composite chart there. That is like looking at your own birth chart. Okay, it's the same thing, except you're looking at it for the two people. It is different in the sense of, with your natal chart, Your natal chart is drawn based on the time, place, and date of your birth. But a composite chart is not drawn on that kind of data, because a composite chart is essentially taking the midpoint of your sun and your partner's sun and finding the position of where the sun might be between your two suns, and that becomes the composite sun. So as you can see from that, we're not working with a time as such, but nevertheless, composite charts do work. Okay, so once you have your composite chart, if you wanted to have a look at what's happening in your relationship at the moment, or maybe you've just met somebody and you're thinking of starting a relationship with them. Well, there's a couple of different things there, because if you're just thinking of possibly getting into a relationship with somebody, that's not really the beginning of a relationship. That's just an inquisitive sort of mind, perhaps, and perhaps some desires there as well, but not real certainty. So there's a few question marks. So let's just leave that one out. But let's just say that you just started a relationship, or let's just say that you've been in a relationship for 5 years or 2 years or 6 months, and you want to see what is actually happening to the composite chart through transits and through progressions as well. And I just want to say a little bit about the difference between transits and progressions, and it's really important, because transits are essentially a universal collective experience, external experience. So what I mean by that is, at the moment we have transiting Saturn in the sign of Capricorn, and it entered Capricorn 22nd of December, something like that. So it's at about 1 degrees of Capricorn today, or thereabouts. Now, that Saturn in Capricorn at 1 degrees is a universal predicament, isn't it? It's not a personal thing, unless, of course, you have Saturn at 1 degrees of Capricorn in your own chart, in your birth chart. Then you're having a Saturn return. So the transits work on that universal collective level and externally. The transits are what appear to happen to us, as it were. So transits, in a lot of ways, we don't have a lot of control over, you could say, to a degree, because they are external energies that are just playing out in the cosmos. And the control that one might have, you could say, is how they choose to respond to this universal energy or transit that is happening for everyone. So, Saturn in Capricorn, and I've mentioned this a few times, just because it's in Capricorn, and it's a great place, it's in rulership, we know that, it's prime in its position, it's elevated, it's strong, it's got a lot to offer and deliver. Well, if it's not aspecting something in your chart, or you don't have, Saturn in Capricorn, or, if it's not aspecting something quite significantly in your chart, well, then Saturn in Capricorn will just transit your chart and just do its mundane Saturn thing in the house that it's transiting. Look, Saturn transits in the houses alone are significant. I don't want to take away from that, because they actually are. But I'm merely trying to make the point that transits are universal, okay? They're there for everyone. We're all experiencing them. Now, progressions, on the other hand, are an entirely different level of understanding of astrology and level of experience. Transits are, as I said, universal. We all experience them. Neptune in Pisces at the moment, that's not a personal thing for me, nor for you. That's a collective experience, universal experience. I think you get my drift. Okay. Progressions are something that derive from a very specific method, which again doesn't connect to time as we know it. Well, there's various types of progressions, but the specific progressions I'm actually talking about or referring to today are what's called secondary progressions. Secondary progressions derive from the premise that one day of your life after your birth, the moment you were born, the following day, that equals 1 year. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of this, that would be perhaps very challenging to understand or to even make sense of, and I totally get it. But as you develop your astrology and you start to work with it, you will understand this method and its actual massive importance. So the reason progressions are so powerful and personal is because they operate in the inner. They're an internal experience, and so our internal life and world, which is activated, and it is activated through these various progressions that we have as well. So various dimensions of our inner life will wake up and will shift and will change course and will transform and so forth, based on the progressions, the movement of the planets as you look at your birth chart. So if you had an ephemeris, some of you may not know what that is, some of you may. So this is a standard sort of ephemeris. You can see the years marked there in terms of, 1900 to 2000. So what this is it's just a book of tables, and it just shows you the position of all the planets of every single day of every single year from 1900 to 2000. So if you were born in, 1983, and let's just pick Pisces for example. Say you were born in March, and you were born March 20th in 1982. If you had a look at this page, you can't see it, so don't worry about it too much. You can see this stuff online anyway, but I'm just showing you that I am actually making reference to the actual year and date that I'm talking about. So if you went down the column to the 20th of March 1982, it happens to be a Saturday, and the sun was at 29 degrees of Pisces. Okay, if you are to go to the 21st of March, which, as I mentioned at the beginning of this video, is the true new year, the vernal equinox, spring, the birth of all things, how can that not be the new year, right? Anyway, so 21st of March, a day later of the person who was born on the 20th of March, when their sun was at 29 degrees of Pisces, a day later, the sun is at 0 degrees of Aries, 2 minutes and 39 seconds to be precise. So what does that mean in terms of progressions? What that means is that because this particular individual was born on the 20th of March, which is right at the end of Pisces, and their sun was right at the end of Pisces, when we apply the method of 1 day equals 1 year, what happens to this person's secondary progressed chart is that their sun actually changes signs. So whilst they were born with the sun in Pisces, a day later their progressed sun has moved into Aries. Now that doesn't happen to everyone, but it does happen to a lot of people, because a lot of people are born on the 20th of March, right? But I guess what I'm trying to say is that some people will be born in the middle of the month, or the first week into a sign, or the last week into a sign, etc. So we'll experience our secondary progressed sun about a quarter of the way through of the zodiac throughout the course of our entire life. So we'll only experience 3 to 4 signs maximum in terms of a secondary progressed sun. Now, I don't want to go into this too deeply, but when the sun, the secondary progressed sun changes signs, that is a pretty significant time in a person's life. It's a very deep psychological, spiritual unfoldment. It's a massive shift. So I'll leave that there in terms of that. But so I just wanted to explain, you know, what happens with a secondary progressed birth chart. So every single planet will move accordingly. So if you look at the next day in that ephemeris that I just showed you, you will see that Mercury has moved however much it's moved, you know, Venus has moved, Mars has moved, etc., etc. And all those planets, when you look at the next day of birth, that's a secondary progressed chart right there, but it's only a day after birth. Now, if you were to progress that late, sort of down the track in life a bit, where, for instance, there's two major cycles that occur fairly early in life in terms of young adulthood. And one is the Saturn return, which I think most people are aware of, which happens at around about the age of 28 and a half, 29 and a half, around there. And the other very important cycle that happens at that time is the secondary progressed moon. That happens very close to the Saturn return. It actually happens at around about 27 and a half years of age. So what you've got there in that period for that person is at the age of 27 and a half and 28, 29, those years there are really, really major internally and externally, because the secondary progressed moon is the internal clock of, you know, setting off the timer of things that are actually happening in your life. The moon is what regulates all our internal systems. It's the moon that tells us when we're tired. It's the moon that tells us when we need to wake up. It's the moon that regulates eating, everything, all those things that just happen without us really consciously driving it. It just, you know, it happens internally. That is the moon's regulation, right? And so the secondary progressed lunation cycle is a, first of all, the whole cycle itself is really important to watch and monitor and observe as it travels around your chart. From birth, it takes 27 and a half years to progress all around your chart right back to its natal position. That's how long it takes. So that cycle there is huge. Think back to your life if you're older than that, and think back to what was happening in your life at, you could say, from 27 and a half right through to 29, because that whole period there is very strongly impacted by the secondary progressed moon and the Saturn return. Now, I've sort of gotten off track there because I didn't really want to talk about that, but I guess that just gives you a bit more information. So getting back to the composite chart, actually, just a couple more points on the secondary progress planets. So as I said, it's an internal process and experience. It's an unfoldment. It's an energy, I've made a note here and I want to say this, it's an energy of your chart where all the information that the solar system generates over a 3-month period after your birth. And I'm quoting that from Bernadette Brady, by the way. That's out of one of her books, so I don't want to be done for plagiarizing. So that's a statement in one of her books where she talks about progressions, and I just really like that statement. So the energy in your chart from the time you were born over a 3-month period, 3 months equals 90 days, which equals 90 years. So the first 3 months after your birth encapsulates the next 90 years of your life. That, you know, when I first heard that many moons ago, that blew my mind. That really blew my mind. I was just, it made sense to me. It felt right. I couldn't understand why at the time, but something about it felt right. Because there is something about this sense of physical time that is just one dimension. It's just one level of who we are and of our experiences, because we're experiencing things on, multiple levels, right? So this idea of 90 days equals 90 years is the secondary progress method. 1 day equals 1 year. So secondary progressions are essentially subjective. They are an inner world, inner life unfoldment that goes quite deeply and is not fleeting or passing like transits are, okay? Transits just, depending on which planets we're talking about, of course, transits move fairly quickly. The fastest moving body is the moon. It takes 1 month to do a full lap, to go through the 12 zodiac signs. The sun takes 1 year. Mercury takes just over a year. Venus takes a couple, etc., etc. But secondary progressions move at a very different level, and they work on a very deep internal level. So when we have periods in life where we may go through really intense sort of desires and awakening of some sort, and we may be really sort of passionate, really persistent, and really sort of wanting, to just relentlessly push through something, and it sort of, we can feel it resonating at the core, at the center of our being. This is what marks progressions. This is what progressions do. This is how they are expressed. They activate something very deep within us that takes a very profound turn in our life, which doesn't happen overnight. It happens over a long period course of time, because the 90 days after birth, where that energy gets compressed down and gets internalized, it's like progressions are slowing down time, is another way of putting it, as opposed to the normal time that we look at, the clock on our wall, etc. Progressions just slow everything right down, bring it within, internalize it, subjectify it, and then can experience it out there. They're very deep processes and experiences. So looking at your secondary progressed moon is fantastic to give you insight into what's happening in all the arenas of your chart. The secondary progressed moon will spend about 2.5 years in each house, essentially, depending on the size of your houses and what house system you're using, and what part of the earth you were born on, etc. But generally about 2.5 years, and they remain in a particular phase, because there are 8 lunation phases. So as the secondary progressed moon is traveling through your chart and spending about 2.5 years in each house, it is also spending about 3.5 years in a particular phase. So if you were born in a new moon phase, then you'll spend 3.5 years in the new moon phase before you go into the next new moon phase, etc. So there's a few different levels to be looking at. So transits and progressions are different worlds entirely, okay? And this can possibly help a lot of you understand, when you're looking at transits, with the exception of Pluto, okay? Pluto, from all the work that I have done with charts and people and readings through the years, my mentor and astrologer, his name's Sean, by the way, who I've learned, most of my astrology from, and others as well. So, various people I've spoken to through the years, through their own personal experiences, charts they've done for other people, and all my own experiences, personally and professionally doing readings for people. Pluto is the planet that does not act like a transiting planet. It acts more like progressions. And I think that's because Pluto's inherent soul evolutionary nature could not act any other way but from that deeper sort of space and level and dimension within, because Pluto is the soul. So how's it going to operate in that, fleeting way? And if you think about that, it actually even makes sense when you think about just how long Pluto takes to do a full lap around the zodiac. I mean, none of us in the world that we know today will live until 248 years of age. I don't think. That's how long Pluto takes to do a full cycle around the 12 signs. So even that within itself is making a very strong statement. The fact that Pluto spends so long in one particular sign, that's not by accident. That's there's something much deeper to understand about that, and it's quite hidden as well, because our conscious mind is not able to grasp those sorts of mysteries and those sorts of elements, because our conscious mind tries to make everything linear and right and wrong and good or bad and etc., etc. But there are mysteries that occur in ways that the two physical eyes will never be able to really see or truly understand, and certainly the left brain won't either. So Pluto is the one that, out of all transiting planets, that doesn't act like a normal transiting planet. Its energy is, I would say it's more your destiny, your fate, because it's the soul. It's the soul, choosing these very deep transformations and awakenings. Now, I will do a talk on Pluto. There's a lady called Francesca. Hi, Francesca, if you're watching this, who's asked me to do some more on Pluto, and I will do it after this video. Okay, I don't want to say I promise, but after this video, because I just generally, when I do a video, I just I feel an inspiration about a particular subject or area of astrology, and I just go with that. So I'm not a Virgo. I don't organize and structure in a sort of what I call Virgonized way. That's not me, even though I've got Pluto in Virgo. So I just go with intuition, inspiration, gut feeling, what makes me feel, what I feel connected with, and I'll just kind of go with that. So I felt like talking about this today. So hopefully you guys are enjoying it anyway. All right. So just a couple of last points. When you're actually looking at a composite chart, a relationship chart, what you can actually do is you can do another chart around it with the current transits. So what are the transits that are the planets that are currently transiting in their orbit, in the signs that they're in, the signs of the zodiac in the heavens? Where are they in relation to your composite chart? So you've got your composite chart there, and then on another wheel outside of because the composite chart, remember, it just looks like a normal birth chart, right? So you add another chart around it, which will be the transit chart. You can do it for now, you can do it for 10 years ago, you can do it for 100 years ago if you were around then, or you can project it into the future as well, just as you can with your own natal chart. You can do transits for any moment in time, really. So if you did it for now, for example, you may just want to have a look at what's happening. Just say you started a new relationship and you want to see, well, what are the transits doing to your composite chart? Transits won't always show something, okay, to the composite chart, but sometimes they do, especially if it's Pluto. If it's Pluto, it'll show something. It'll make a hit somewhere. What you want to be looking at is, in the composite chart, in terms of transits, you want to be looking at, are any transiting planets on the angles, the ascendant, descendant, or even midheaven and IC, so the top of the chart and the bottom of the chart. If there are planets on those angles, such as Pluto, or even Saturn for that matter, or even Jupiter for that matter. Each of those planets is going to describe a different level of connection and purpose and meeting, right, to a degree, or how the two of you sort of came together. Or if you have been together for a while, you know, it might just be that transiting Saturn comes to the composite descendant. Now, what would that mean, do you think? I'll give you a brief summary of what that might mean. So you've been in a relationship for a few years. It's been, you know, fairly flowing, fairly okay. No relationship is perfect. If anybody says that, I don't believe them. Transiting Saturn on the composite descendant could indicate the end of a relationship. That's one possibility. I'm not saying it will. I'm just saying that's one possibility. Another possibility is that the two people decide to get married. So it's pretty weird, isn't it? On the one hand, it can be separation, because Saturn is separation. It does bring about separation. But it can also bring about commitment and seriousness. So maybe you've been in the relationship for 1 or 2 years, and suddenly transiting Saturn is conjunct the composite descendant, so the two of you feel something changes about the relationship. There's a sense of, I'm feeling quite serious about this commitment now, and I'm actually ready to maybe take it to a next level. Now, for people who are more conventional, that would be the traditional marriage. For people who are less conventional, that might just mean a deeper level of commitment, where they, you know, it's a process that unfolds where they exchange, you know, certain sort of feelings and ideas and commitments and, you know, words and things like that. So there's a number of different ways it can manifest, but that's just an example, just to give you a little clue. You know, if you've got something, a transiting planet on the composite chart on any of the angles, pay attention to that. It's you know, it's there. It's going to show you some stuff. Also, if you had transiting planets to the composite south node and north node, to the composite sun, to the composite moon, to the composite Venus, composite Mars, really most planets essentially, but there are some planets that will be more striking in terms of the transiting planet connecting to a composite planet, and certainly the aspect, which is the geometrical distance between one planet to another. We know that there are soft aspects and hard aspects, to put it in very simple terms. Hard aspects doesn't mean hard as in the general sort of term hard that we understand the word hard to be, although they can be very challenging, but they produce results and action as well, so they can produce a lot of change. You know, hard aspects can bring a lot of change. It can be through a bit of suffering, you know, a bit of hard work, but, you know, no pain, no gain, they say. The other thing you can do as well, just very quickly because I want to finish this up, you can actually, so you can create a secondary progressed chart with your natal chart, right? Leave that aside for a moment. Actually, no, bring that back. So what you do is you create a secondary progressed chart for yourself, then do a secondary progressed chart for your partner, and then make a composite chart out of those two secondary progressed charts. So what you end up with is a secondary progressed composite chart. Okay, so I'm hoping you understand where I'm coming from. It's a bit hard because I can't get an immediate response from you. So let me just say that again. You can do, you progress your own chart to any time, by the way. You can do it to now, you can do it to 10 years ago. It's the same principle in terms of movement of whether it's current, past or future. You do that with transits, you can do that with progressions as well, okay? So for any time. So let's just say, use the example for now. So you're wanting to do a secondary progress chart for yourself for December 30, 2017. I nearly forgot what year it was. There's a reason for that. Then you do a secondary progress chart for your partner for the same date, 30th of December 2017. And those charts will become the one composite chart, a progressed composite chart. Okay, so then you have a progressed composite chart, and what you do, this is fascinating when you do it, you do a bi-wheel, which I was describing earlier. So a bi-wheel is just two charts essentially around each other. So in the inner side, the inner wheel will be, here we go. I can just show you this. I'll just hide the name. Just to keep this confidential for the person. This is not a secondary progressed composite chart, but it doesn't matter, because what I want to show you is just simply what a bi-wheel looks like, and just to get the idea in case you don't know. So this would be, for example, the composite chart. Let's just say that's the composite chart there. All those planets inside this wheel represent the composite chart, which is the relationship chart of the two people. The outer wheel, just on the outside here, that would be the secondary progressed composite chart. Okay, so what you're doing is you're looking at, let's just pretend that this is a composite chart and a secondary progressed composite chart. So let me see if I can find something that's useful as an example for us here. See, we've got to keep in mind orbs. That's really important. Might have to do a talk on orbs just to get people thinking about that if they already haven't. Look, there's not much here, but to, for the example that I'm trying to generate here. But okay, just imagine that's a composite chart and that's a secondary progressed composite chart. What you're looking at have any of the secondary progressed planets come to an angle of the composite chart? Have any of the secondary progressed planets, are they forming a very particular aspect to the composite chart? So that's what you're looking for. And when you see hits and things connecting, then what you're going to see is shifts, changes, things unfolding in the relationship, not like transits on that external level. Progressions, even in a composite chart, will act very much as they do for an individual and their progress chart. Progressions will act on that internal level. Okay, so say for example you had the secondary progressed Mars conjunct the composite Sun, right, in a chart that you were looking at. So, we're talking about two masculine energies, the Sun, solar energy, and Mars, and very sort of ego planets as well. So if that was to sort of manifest on an external level, that could be, some conflict and fighting and things like that. But when we're looking at progressions, we're talking about some kind of internal awakening or shift emerging, unfolding. So with secondary progressed Mars and the Sun, that could just be something igniting or emerging or being born within the individuals in the relationship about their passions and their drives and things of that sort of nature. Something about their passions and their anger and their drive is activated, if you like. So something begins there in the relationship. When you've got secondary progressed Mars coming to conjunct the composite Sun. Okay, that's just one example. So yeah, hopefully this all makes sense to you. Hopefully. I think I'll leave it there. It's about 40 minutes. That's long enough. Okay, so in summary, you can do a composite chart, look at the transits to the composite chart, You can do, sorry, I'm playing around with my hair a lot today. It's been straightened and I don't like it straight. So anyway, so composite chart, transits around the composite chart becoming a secondary progress chart. Then you put the composite chart and the secondary progress chart around the composite chart. These are two very different techniques and ways of assessing what's happening to a composite chart. And just one final point I want to say to you. See, the thing is this, when a couple are together, and of course they're always going to maintain their individual birth charts, right? So they'll have transits and progressions happening to their individual birth charts, which again is all these other levels and layers. And then you have the composite chart, and you've got things happening to the composite chart via transits, progressions, and so forth. So you can see why we're so complex. You can see why there's so many things going on, internally and externally, particularly when we're in relationships. Okay, so yeah, hopefully that gives you a few things to think about and play around with and see how you go. And please feel free to ask any questions, make any comments, and please subscribe and share if you haven't. And thank you to those of you who have and who are supporting me. I really appreciate it. And there's much more to come. This is a real Aries birthing a stage for me in this whole process of doing videos. So I'm very excited about the things that I'm slowly working on and will be bringing to you. So thanks for watching, and I will say Happy New Year only from the point of view of the conventional January 1, 2018, just to wish people a lovely time if they're celebrating and so forth. But don't forget, the true New Year is the 21st of March, 0 degrees Aries. That's new beginnings, new birth, springtime. That's the true New Year. I'll leave it there. Love you all. Thanks. Bye.